So you think that the federal government has a problem with finances. What did you hear about what's going on in Boston? And to help us understand it even better, we have with us this evening our state rep, Hannah Bowen. Welcome, Hannah.
Thanks, George. Glad to be back.
This is TBR, and I'm George Binns. Mm-hmm. So the thing that got me this week is all these programs that the governor is planning on.
Yeah. And
they all start with $250 million here and $250 million there.
Yeah.
And I remember the old joke that $1 million here, $1 million there, soon you're talking about real money. And we're way beyond that.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And the other thing is it's makes it sound like she's got a slush fund someplace that there's a fancier name for it, I know. But it seems to be already baked into the system.
Yeah, so I mean, I think part of what's happening is actually what you started with. Like, it looks like the federal government is in complete disarray. The plans to dismantle key programs that we all depend on are happening. And we're left to figure out how we want to respond to that locally. Do we want to just say, okay, people don't get food assistance, we don't have affordable housing, we don't invest in our infrastructure anymore? We could say that. We've decided so far not to. We've decided to say, we here care about our quality of life. We care about being able to afford to live where we grew up or where we moved to and love. So we're going to continue investing. And we're lucky that we have a strong economy. We have a strong tax base. And so while it is painful to pay taxes and pay for everything else in your life, it allows us to keep doing things we need to do. So one of the big announcements this week was about filling a gap left by the federal government so far. Still hope there's congressional action by the end of the month to restore the Affordable Care Act subsidies that have really gotten people through the last few years. If they don't, there is a plan in place. The governor has put a plan in place to draw on trust fund money that helps keep our overall health system functioning well to ease that pain in the short term. That isn't money that we have on an ongoing basis forever to just recreate a program that our federal taxes are supposed to be paying for. We're still paying those federal taxes. We're supposed to be getting the national benefits of that. But in the meantime, that will help. And so the governor's team and the legislature are all trying to think now about how many gaps can we fill and how can we do that. Thankfully, our revenue projections look all right. They don't look great. It's not going to be a banner year for budgeting. But other than some of the broader economic impacts of federal decisions, we have really strong and creative employers here. We have people working hard. We have an economy that's still working as well as it can locally. And so our revenue projections don't look awful. And the cuts don't look like they'll have to be too severe. But it's going to be tough, and there's going to be trade-offs. And I'm hoping and will be pushing for us to really make the kinds of investments like were announced this week. Use whatever funds we have available to blunt some of that pain and really focus on the like frontline core delivery of key services that people need, because those are the parts of the budget that we feel. So it's school funding, it's road and sidewalk funding, like a lot of that flows through the state. It's healthcare, it's food security, it's housing. There are other things that state government does, and we need to make sure that those are all shored up first when we're building the budget.
So we get into, a predicament that we're trying to backstop the problems in Washington. And at the same time, there's a continuing threat of the taxes going up. And that is pushing people and businesses out of the state because New Hampshire is very friendly for companies and people.
And there was a story just this past week of a company in Andover looking to expand, going from 300 employees up to closer to 1,000. It's like a medical device and transportation company, and they ended up moving to Somerville. They're moving their headquarters, and it's not because the taxes are lower in Somerville even than Andover, right? Let alone, they were looking in New Hampshire, but couldn't find the infrastructure built out that they need and couldn't bring all of their employees with them to New Hampshire. They have people who want to live in the Boston area. So it's true that there are people who are making decisions based on either the tax level or other cost of living features here and deciding to move elsewhere. What I worry about are people sort of my age and the 2 decades behind me who can't afford places to live outside of a family member they can stay with or, someplace much further from where they want to be to work. I worry about people who are newcomers to the state from other parts of the country or other parts of the world who can't quite get that foothold. I'm less worried about, if someone is making a decision based on the incremental tax rate on their $3 millionth dollar, like we want to keep them in Massachusetts as economic engines, but it's not the marginal tax rate that makes the decision for them. It's things like, do they have the workers? Do they have the infrastructure? And we're delivering that. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the reasons we've seen, the millionaire's tax, when it was up for debate, that fair share amendment, adding an incremental tax increase on high earners. There was a big concern that it would drive high earners out, and it hasn't. It's raised great revenue. Yeah. And the people who are moving out over affordability concerns, that's what we need to tackle. And unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer places for people to go that cost less because that cost of living increase is happening to different degrees all around us too. Yeah. So it's sort of how we deal with that is really about those investments in quality of life and bringing costs down for people.
Well, the other problem you get into is that, okay, there are places in the Midwest and in the South where housing and cost of living is significantly less. But the problem is there are no jobs there.
Right. And people are struggling to afford their basic needs in those places too, because at a different dollar amounts, but same struggle, unfortunately.
Yeah, and as you say, the dollar amount that you get from a job there is not the same kind of job you have here. Yep. So it's a universal problem, at least a national problem, that there's no easy solution to it.
No, which is not to say there are not any solutions to it. And so I think there is plenty of...
Millionaire's tax was part of the answer.
Yeah.
And I got a kick out of it a couple of years ago when I first started collecting the money.
Yeah.
They got twice as much as they expected to get.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, what are we going to do with all this extra money?
Right. Oh, right. We have all these priorities. We've been waiting to spend money on.
Unfortunately, it had limits on what you could spend it on. Yeah. So it didn't turn into a slush fund. So it was
really carefully
focused.
Constructed to help fund transportation and education and make sure they never go underfunded.
Yeah. So. And the other issue that comes up is we continually talk about having Beverly as a vibrant community downtown.
Yeah.
And the vibrant community is made up of small businesses that have few employees, and at the same time, they have all sorts of taxes. And I started looking up how many different taxes there are, and it's a little mind-boggling that the number of taxes they get involved with. And I guess you mentioned you were interested in one of the processes. What does it cost them to process a credit card? Mm-hmm. So how does that fit into the things the state controls? I would imagine that's something between the bank and the guy that got the slip from the credit card.
Yeah, no, it's true. And so this is where, really, I think it's important for all legislators at all levels, really all elected officials, to constantly be listening to what are the different cost structures for our business community and what are the opportunities and where can we help sort of make it easier to contribute to the local economy and make that thriving economy. And sometimes it is about direct taxes. Sometimes it's about direct regulations on different industries, and sometimes it's incentives for one or the other. So the move of that lab space to Somerville, like there are tax incentives involved in that move.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some direct levers. And then there's some policies that just shape like the environment that businesses are operating in. So we got questions from small businesses here in Beverly saying, hey, one of the costs that we have a really hard time controlling and that really eats into our bottom line is credit card processing fees. And that's something that could be tackled at multiple different layers of regulation, because what the sort of core providers like the Visas and MasterCards of the world, what their product is, the way issuing banks work, the way processing companies and a lot of restaurants, small businesses, small vendors are working through a small number of the kind of vendor processing, payment processing companies. Like what rules we put on all of them really matter for the businesses at the end of the day, because a large company might be able to negotiate with a major national bank or with, a Visa or a MasterCard. A small company that has a choice between 3 or 4 vendors has no leverage themselves. And so they have to basically accept whatever fees are allowed. So for us to be able to say what's allowed is one lever. And the other thing that restaurant owners here especially raised was, if that cost is going to come through regardless, whether we are able to help control how fast it rises or limit, how competitive that industry is, or not limit how competitive, but encourage competition in that space and limit how extractive it can be, that's one thing. But if there's going to be some cost, can it be at least sort of carved out so that consumers see what's being passed on to them? And it doesn't have to be built in for consumers who choose to pay cash. What would that look like? And currently in Massachusetts, state law, it's not super clear, but it's clear enough and interpreted to effectively say you just have to build that into your overall costs. You have to guess how many of your customers are going to use credit cards. That's been increasing a lot.
Yeah.
We all enjoy the convenience. Even businesses enjoy the convenience of processing, but it's a much greater share of customers in most businesses. So you have to guess what that is and build it into your pricing across the board versus treating cash transactions one way based on the costs of everything else in your business, and credit card transactions just add that fee. And so there are a couple of proposals that other reps and senators filed, and now several have been packaged together on the Senate side to just say, yes, you can pass on those fees. Here's how you have to communicate it to consumers. Yes, it can be a separate type of charge and can limit how much businesses can pass on. So they can't say, oh, to use a credit card, we're going to charge you 10% more, even though their payment to the credit card processor is only 3% of the charge. So that's been something, I was running a nonprofit. We did some payment processing, but not at the scale that small businesses are with hundreds of transactions here and there. So that's not something I had experienced personally. Needed neighbors to bring that to my attention and as an office for us to do that research, talk to other legislators and find, there is actually a process moving forward that would be helpful and that would adapt a little bit to the fact that now a lot more people use credit cards and debit cards than 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And that is really shifting the burden of costs onto business owners, and consumers don't get to make as much of a choice about, I would rather pay in cash and not pay that fee, or I really value the convenience of this, so I'll pay the fee. Like that, we're sort of shielded from that cost, and it's spread out across everybody. Now you'd be able to actually differentiate that. And I think there's interesting legislation coming up on data privacy that a lot of people have been reaching out about, that I'm excited to see come out, that really also gets at what do we allow particularly large technology companies to collect about us and our behaviors and our shopping and our credit card transactions and where we are and all of that, and can they sell it on or not? and what can it be used for? And that's something that, also imposes a cost on people or kind of monetizes our behavior in a way we're not even aware of. And so for us to be able to make choices about what information we're comfortable sharing, when and how and with whom, the laws haven't kept pace with the technology in all cases, or have kept pace with pieces of it, but have to keep changing to keep up.
Well, one of the problems I see with that is if you look at your utility bill, gas or electric.
Oh, yeah.
And the last time I looked at my bill, I'm paying more money on these string of fees that are attached to it than it costs to buy the electricity or to buy the gas.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's been a lot of discussion about this lately, and we're going to be taking up an energy affordability bill to tackle it. But the biggest charge is the distribution and transmission infrastructure that's been built. So today is a good day to be talking about it because actually, at the State House, they're celebrating that today the opening of the clean energy transmission line that is bringing hydropower from Canada that will, I think, eventually cover something like 20% of our energy needs in the state. And that was a very long process to get that sustainable energy here. There's some promising signals we'll see about reopening the offshore wind energy that we're also planning to rely on. And those things will help eventually bring down some of the energy costs because we won't be paying for really expensive gas infrastructure that we won't need for as long. And that just will actually improve our energy market. But yeah, it's the difficult points, and it's true for individuals and it's true for small businesses that you look at all the different costs around you, and yes, your electric bill is going up. If you have gas, that's going up. The cost of your groceries for an individual or your materials for a small business, like everything is increasing. And I think I understand why it's then that much more of a burden to see a tax bill increase, but it's also logical, right? Like if we are seeing across the board inflation for all the inputs, that's true for government as well, and government revenues come from taxes. So it is one of those, like they're all happening for the same reason. And all need these like layered solutions to make sure they're not growing out of control and beyond what people can afford, because that's what's happened over the last few years.
Yeah, and you get into a lot of these issues like the offshore wind. They started a going business where the Salem power plant used to be, and turned that into a staging area for wind. Now that's shut down, and I saw today that they've sued the government for shutting them down. But at the same time, you get into these issues of, well, what does it really cost for electricity produced in such and such a way? And if you look at just at the cost of solar cells, they've gotten to be very, very cheap to make electricity that way. But then you get into the issue of, well, solar cells don't work all the time. They got to have a backup. And the next best thing for backing them up is natural gas. And battery systems, and and a lot of things, but Well, the battery systems are terribly expensive. They're $1,000 a kilowatt hour. And we have huge arrays of solar cells. And it's very convenient right now that if you've got a solar panel on your roof and you make electricity all day and you're not using all that you're making, you sell it back to the grid. The grid has to buy it from you at the real estate rate, not real estate, the residential rate. Whereas they buy electricity off the grid at a commercial rate. So there is a little bit of an increment thrown in there.
Yep, an incentive to help people adopt solar and pay it off, yeah.
And you get to the point where if you don't have all this backup, the solar cells are marginally useful because you don't get sunshine all day,
right?
Especially at night, kind of thing. So
we use a lot less electricity in the middle of the night too. So it's the
in the middle of the night,
but
one of the things that surprised me years ago when I got looking into electricity usage, the peak in the electricity usage is 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or in the evening, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And they looked into it deeper. What's going on? Well, Mama just turned on the stove to start making supper. And it was,
or Dad.
Yeah. However, but you get into these issues and you start to get into finding out what's really going on with them. And there are some.
They're complicated.
They're complicated, and there's a lot of surprises, and they don't get thrashed out. And you just jump into things and wonder all of a sudden, whoa, what happened here?
How did we end up here?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot to be said about having a long, hard look at what are we doing, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
And the why are we doing it, I think, is something that is missing. One of the things you mentioned earlier was we're talking about some of this money going into school systems. Well, the governor wants, not the governor, some agency wants $600 million for the school systems, and they want to encourage post-secondary schools. Well, okay, that sounds nice. What are they going to do with it? And
I feel like we do sometimes get stuck talking about the numbers and forget the why or the how.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, so we're going to be digging in a little bit more on the inner workings of state support for our school system. So actually, I'm excited to host a community conversation soon. It's one of the things I wanted to be able to do in this role, and we're launching the first one on February 5th over at the Ryleside Civic Association's building in the evening. It's like a 6 to 7:30. We're going to do a panel and then conversation on school funding and the state's role specifically in school funding and what we want to see. So we've invited the superintendents from Beverly and the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District, since Beverly and Wenham comprise this state rep district, and then have information from DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, who administer the state funding according to the Chapter 70 formula. And then we get into all of the pieces of state law that govern that and all the regulations. So we'll hear they're wrapping up a study on what changes to that formula could be beneficial. And then there's also the conversation about, so that formula basically says every school district is going to get some state funding back, and we have a way of figuring out a fair distribution.
Yeah.
And so there's two pieces. What does that distribution look like? What's the formula to divide up the pie? But also, how big is the pie? Because if you change the formula and don't change the pie, you have winners and losers.
Yeah.
If you change the formula and grow the pie, you could have all winners, some greater or less. So I think it's going to be a really interesting budget year for cities and towns. By interesting, I mean hard.
Yeah.
We've already seen the projections for Beverly. Next week, I'm going to listen in on the initial conversations in the town. And, it doesn't look great.
No.
And the decisions have to be about the why and the how. Yes, they'll be about the numbers, but it's really like, do we want great education for all of our students? How can we do that best? How much would it cost if we did absolutely everything on our wish list? And how much can we accomplish for what's available? And how do we close that gap? And so we're going to do the event to get people talking, a little bit of grounding of those kind of facts and figures of how things work, but then start the conversation so that I can go into budget season fighting for what we need. And I hope to give some space for people to just start thinking outside of the constraints of like the formal budget process, just talking with each other about how school funding works.
And one of the things that came out interesting is they changed the formula at Essex Tech, and they're getting away from admission by grade level or performance to a lottery.
Yeah, and that's a statewide change across all the agricultural technical schools.
All of a sudden, a lot more people are applying to Essex Tech.
Yeah.
So what a problem they had that said we can't continue to serve the people that want this thing, so we're going to change it to a lottery so more people can get into it.
Yeah.
And emphasizes that the problem is even bigger than what they were struggling with.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you get to the thing is, where is the priorities? And should we be putting money into high schools like Beverly High School, or expand Essex Tech, or build another one?
Yeah, and they're doing such specialized programming that it wouldn't make sense to have all of those programs in every single high school. That would be prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a greater need, and there were people who had given up on applying who really do want to go, and now we're seeing those numbers.
Yeah, because not necessarily the greatest poet is going to want to be an electrician.
You never know.
You never know. So you get into some of these issues, and it's getting to be a challenge to keep track of it. So we would like to invite you back to continue these discussions, because otherwise I don't think we can really understand what's going on downtown, at least not from the papers. They don't. They have so many little pieces they throw in that it doesn't tie together.
Yeah, well, we get to connect the dots a little bit on this.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And as I usually mention, if you got a comment, my email address is in the credits, so send me your thoughts. And if you have a longer comment, there's room for you here at the table. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.